Ma'am, you need to leave this area right now.
Officer, I have every right to be here.
Not when you're causing a disturbance. Move along!
I'm not leaving. I know my rights.
We'll see about that. It can't be here. You're obstructing.
I have every right to be here.
Everyone, just calm down. This is a police matter. Back off.
I know my rights. You can't do this.
We'll see about that. Ma'am! Ma'am, you're under arrest for theft.
This is a mistake. I haven't stolen anything.
Save it. You're coming with us now.
I want my lawyer!
Hands behind your back. You need to come with me now.
On what grounds? I'm not going anywhere.
Obstruction. You're involved in this.
I want my lawyer. I'm not saying anything.
Then you'll come with us.
The sound of steel ratcheting against bone echoed louder than the thunder rolling over the Arlington asphalt. It was not just an arrest. It was a mistake that would end a career. Rain slicked the hood of the black SUV as Officer Bryce Callahan shoved the woman's face against the cold metal, ignoring her calm, terrifyingly steady warning. He thought he was taking down a suspect. He thought he was being a hero. He did not know that the wrist he was binding belonged to one of the highest-ranking counterterrorism agents on the East Coast, and that his entire world was going to burn. The parking lot of the Gold's Gym in Northern Virginia was a miserable grid of gray puddles and flickering sodium lights. Inside a sleek, unmarked Chevy Tahoe parked in the far corner away from the entrance, Agent Serena Blake sat in the dark. The engine was off, but the dashboard was alive with a soft glow from a ruggedized laptop. She had the kind of sharp, symmetrical features that usually made people pause. However, she was not there to be seen. She was dressed in civilian workout gear, black leggings, and an oversized gray hoodie. But her mind was far away, tracking a financial transaction moving through a shell company in Beirut. As a senior special agent with the FBI's counterterrorism division, she did not usually do stakeouts in gym parking lots, but her contact, a jittery informant named Frankie, had insisted on a neutral ground drop for a flash drive containing evidence on a domestic radicalization cell. He was late. She tapped the steering wheel, her eyes scanning the lot. Frankie or I am gone. 3 rows over, a patrol cruiser rolled by slowly. It was a standard-issue Dodge Charger belonging to the Arlington County Police Department. Behind the wheel sat Officer Bryce Callahan. He was a young officer fresh from the academy, fueled by a dangerous combination of caffeine and insecurity. He was a legacy hire. His father had been a captain in a neighboring district, and he had spent his entire life hearing war stories. He desperately wanted one of his own. He was tired of noise complaints and feral catcalls. He wanted a felony arrest. He wanted to feel like a real police officer. As he cruised the lot, his headlights swept over the dark corner. The light caught the reflective tint of the Tahoe. Suspicious vehicle, he muttered to himself, unconsciously puffing out his chest. He tapped the brakes. The car sat parked in the dark area. A figure was inside, hunched over something. To a seasoned cop, this looked like someone checking their phone or eating a sandwich. To Bryce Callahan, whose head was filled with tactical scenarios and adrenaline, it looked like a drug deal or a burglary in progress. He swung the cruiser around, not bothering to radio dispatch yet. He wanted to see what he had first. He pulled up perpendicular to the Tahoe, blocking it in, and hit the spotlight. Inside the Tahoe, Serena squinted as the blinding white beam flooded her vision. She sighed, closing the laptop lid. Great! Local PD. She rolled down her window as Bryce approached. He walked with that exaggerated swagger rookies often adopted to compensate for their lack of experience. Hand resting heavily on his holster, chin tucked, flashlight raised high in his left hand. Evening, Serena said, her voice calm, projecting the authority she wielded daily. Hands where I can see them. Bryce barked, his voice cracking slightly. He shined the light directly into her eyes. Serena did not flinch. She kept her hands on the steering wheel, fingers splayed. My hands are on the wheel, officer. Can you lower the light? I am blinded. I asked the questions. Bryce snapped. What are you doing back here? This is private property. I am waiting for a friend, Serena said. I have a membership here. ID, Bryce demanded now. Serena moved slowly. She knew the dance. My identification is in my bag on the passenger seat. I am going to reach for it. I am also going to reach for my credentials. Credentials? Bryce scoffed. Just give me your driver's license. Serena reached over. She grabbed her wallet, but her fingers also brushed the leather folio that held her FBI badge in commission. She decided to lead with a license first, not wanting to big-time the kid unless necessary. She handed the license out the window. Bryce snatched it. Serena Blake. He read aloud, shining his light on the card and then back at her face. He looked at the car. No front plate. Common for federal vehicles, but to Bryce, it was a violation. Get out of the car. Serena paused. Officer, is that necessary? I have not committed a crime. I am sitting in a parking lot. I said, get out of the car, Bryce shouted, his hand twitching near his weapon. Failure to comply is an arrestable offense. Step out now. Serena took a deep breath. She assessed the situation. The kid was amped up. If she argued, he might do something stupid. If she got out, she could de-escalate, show him the badge, and send him on his way before Frankie arrived. Okay, Serena said softly. I am stepping out. She opened the door and stood up. She was tall, standing eye to eye with Bryce. The rain began to drizzle, cold and sharp. Turn around! Hands on the roof, Bryce commanded. Officer, look, Serena said, her tone hardening. I think there is a misunderstanding. If you look in my bag, you will see my badge. I am a federal agent. Bryce froze for a split second. Then a smirk crossed his face. He had heard this one before. Everyone was somebody important when they got caught. His training officer had told him, do not let them talk their way out of it. Yeah, and I am the police commissioner, Bryce retorted, hands on the roof. I am searching the vehicle for narcotics. You do not have probable cause to search my vehicle, Serena said, her voice dropping an octave. It was not a question. It was a statement of law, and you are making a very serious mistake. I smell marijuana, Bryce lied. It was the oldest trick in the book to manufacture probable cause. That gives me cause. Serena's eyes narrowed. You smell rain and exhaust. You are lying, Officer Callahan. She read the nameplate on his chest. The use of his name spoken with such dismissive confidence snapped something in Bryce. He grabbed her wrist. That is it, he snarled. You are under arrest. The physical contact changed everything. Serena Blake had been trained at Quantico. She had taken down cartel operators in El Paso and breached safe houses in Detroit. Her muscle memory screamed at her to disarm the man grabbing her. A simple wrist lock and a leg sweep would have put Bryce face first in a puddle in seconds, but she did not. She knew that striking a uniformed police officer, even a stupid one, would turn this into a circus she could not control. It would bury the investigation she was running. She had to play the long game. Stop, Serena said firmly, not pulling away, but holding her ground. Officer Callahan, listen to me very carefully. My credentials are in the passenger seat. It is a federal commission. I am on an active operation. If you cuff me, you are interfering with a federal investigation. Bryce was not listening. The adrenaline was roaring in his ears like a jet engine. He spun her around, shoving her forcefully against the wet side of the Tahoe. Thud! Serena's cheek pressed against the cold metal. You are making a career-ending mistake, she said, her voice muffled but distinct. Resisting arrest, Bryce yelled for the benefit of nobody but the dash cam. He yanked her left arm behind her back, twisting it painfully high. I am not resisting, Serena stated clearly. I am complying under duress. Bryce fumbled for his handcuffs. His hands were shaking slightly, a mix of excitement and the slippery rain. He slapped the cold steel onto her left wrist, then grabbed her right, forcing them together. Click, click. The sound was final. You have the right to remain silent. Bryce began reciting, his voice breathless as he tightened the cuffs harder than necessary. The metal bit into the soft skin of Serena's wrists. I know my rights better than you do, son, Serena said quietly. Bryce spun her around to face him. He felt powerful. He had controlled the situation. He had the suspect in custody. Get in the car. My bag, Serena said. You need to secure my weapon. Bryce stopped dead. You have a gun? I am an FBI agent, she said slowly, as if talking to a toddler. My service weapon is in a holster clipped to the inside of my bag. If you leave it there and someone steals it, that is on you. Secure it. Bryce blinked. Doubt, cold and worm-like, began to wiggle into his stomach, but he crushed it. She was bluffing. She had to be. I will secure the vehicle, Bryce said, trying to maintain his bravado. You get in the back. He opened the rear door of the Charger and pushed her inside. The back of a police cruiser is designed to be uncomfortable. Hard plastic seats, cramped legroom, the smell of stale sweat and disinfectant. Serena sat awkwardly, her hands pinned behind her, watching through the plexiglass divider. As Bryce went back to her car, she saw him shine his flashlight into the passenger side. She saw his body language change. Bryce reached into the bag. He pulled out the black Glock 19. He stared at it. Then he pulled the leather folio. He flipped it open. Even through the rain-streaked window, Serena could see him stiffen. The gold shield of the Federal Bureau of Investigation glinted in the beam of his flashlight. Inside the cruiser, Serena closed her eyes and began to count backward from 10. She was not angry anymore. She was calculating. Outside, Bryce Callahan felt the blood drain from his face. He stared at the photo ID next to the badge. Special Agent Serena Blake, the woman in the car. "Oh, God," he whispered. He looked back at the cruiser. She was watching him. Panic set in. His mind raced through his options. Maybe it is fake. It has to be fake. People bought fake badges online all the time. Real FBI agents did not sit in dark parking lots in hoodies. Real FBI agents did not let themselves get cuffed by rookies. He convinced himself. It was a good fake. It had to be. If he backed down now, he would look like an idiot. If he uncuffed her and she was fake, he would be liable. But if he brought her in, the station would sort it out. The sergeant would know. He had to commit. He had gone too far to turn back. Bryce shoved the gun and the badge back into her bag, threw the bag into his trunk, and jogged back to the driver's seat. He slammed the door, shielding himself from the rain. "Found your little props," Bryce said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. His voice shook, betraying him. "Carrying a forged federal badge is a felony. Add that to the list." Serena looked at his eyes in the mirror. They were wide, terrified eyes, masking themselves with aggression. "Make the call, Callahan," Serena said. "Call your supervisor. Tell them you have an FBI agent in custody. I am taking you to the house," Bryce said, putting the car in gear. "You can tell your story to the judge." "You check the badge," Serena said calmly. "You saw it. You know it is real. Now you are kidnapping a federal officer to cover your mistake." "Shut up," Bryce yelled. He hit the lights and sirens, peeling out of the parking lot, desperate to get to the safety of the precinct where the rules made sense, running from the truth, sitting in his back seat. As the siren wailed, Serena shifted her weight, alleviating the pressure on her wrists. She was not worried about jail. She was worried about Frankie. He would show up, see the empty car, and bolt. The operation was blown, all that work gone. And for that, Bryce Callahan was going to pay. "Callahan," Serena said, her voice cutting through the siren's wail. "Do you have a lawyer?" Bryce did not answer. He just drove faster. The ride to the Arlington precinct was tense. Neither of them spoke. Bryce gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Serena sat in silence, memorizing the route, the speed, the traffic violations he was committing in his haste. When they pulled into the Sallyport, the secure garage for prisoner intake, Bryce felt a momentary wave of relief. This was his turf. The garage door rattled shut behind them, sealing them in concrete and fluorescent light. Bryce hauled Serena out of the car. He was rougher this time, performing for the cameras in the garage, trying to look professional. He marched her toward the heavy steel door of the intake processing area. Inside, the air smelled of floor wax and coffee. Behind the high booking desk sat Sergeant Vince Harlan. He was a veteran with a mustache that looked like a push broom and eyes that had seen everything. He was eating a turkey sandwich and reading a fishing magazine. He looked up as Bryce wrestled Serena toward the bench. Vince's eyes flicked from Bryce to Serena. He stopped chewing. "What you got, Callahan?" Vince asked, his voice gravelly. "Suspicious vehicle, refusal to identify, resisting arrest," Bryce recited, breathless. "Also possession of a forged federal instrument and an unregistered firearm." Vince raised an eyebrow. He looked at Serena. She did not look like the usual Saturday night drunk or the drug dealers they brought in. She stood tall despite the cuffs, her expression one of bored contempt. "Forged instrument?" Vince asked. "She has a fake FBI badge?" Bryce said, placing the evidence bag on the counter and the gun. Vince put down his sandwich. He wiped his hands on a napkin and stood up. He walked over to the counter and picked up the leather folio Bryce had bagged. He opened it. He looked at the badge. He looked at the commission card. He held it up to the light, checking the holographic watermark. Then he looked at Serena. "Agent Blake?" Vince asked. Serena nodded. "Can you please instruct your officer to remove these cuffs? I have lost circulation in my thumbs." Vince looked back at Bryce. The sergeant's face went from bored to beet red in seconds. "Callahan," Vince said, his voice dangerously low. "Where did you find this?" "At the Gold's gym lot," Bryce said, his confidence faltering. She was acting suspicious. "Did you run the badge number?" Vince asked. "I assumed it was fake." She refused to get out of the car. "Unlock her," Vince barked. It was not a request. "Sergeant, unlock her now," Vince roared, the sound echoing off the tiled walls. The other officers in the room stopped what they were doing. The intake nurse froze. Bryce fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped them. They clattered on the linoleum. Serena watched him bend down to pick them up. "Take your time, officer," she said. "I am not going anywhere." Bryce got the key in the lock. The mechanism turned. The cuff swung open. Serena rubbed her wrists. Deep red furrows were etched into her skin. She rotated her shoulders, wincing slightly. Then she reached out her hand toward Vince. "My badge, Sergeant." Vince handed it to her like it was made of nitroglycerin. "Agent Blake, I apologize. The rookie he is green." "Green is a color, Sergeant," Serena said, clipping the badge onto her belt. "Incompetence is a liability." She turned to Bryce. He was standing there, pale and small. The swagger was gone. "You have the right to remain silent," Serena said to him. Bryce blinked. "What?" "I asked you in the car if you had a lawyer," Serena said, pulling a cell phone from her pocket, the one item Bryce had neglected to confiscate in his panic. "Because you are going to need the one." She dialed a number. She put it on speaker. "Director," a voice answered on the second ring. It was the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office. "Sir, it is Blake," Serena said, staring dead into Bryce's eyes. "The operation is blown. I see eyes in the wind." "What happened?" the voice on the phone demanded. "Did the target make you?" "No, sir," Serena said. "I was arrested by a patrol officer from Arlington PD. I am currently in their booking area. He ignored my credentials and assaulted a federal officer." There was a silence on the line that was colder than the grave. "Who?" the director asked. "Officer Bryce Callahan," Serena said. "Put him on," the director said. Serena held the phone out to Bryce. "It is for you." Bryce Callahan held the iPhone like it was a live grenade with the pin pulled. His hand trembled so violently that the device shook against his ear. On the other end of the line was Assistant Director Victor Hale, a man whose reputation in Washington, D.C. was built on flaying incompetent bureaucrats and hunting down foreign spies. "Officer Callahan." Hale's voice was deceptively calm, a low rumble that vibrated through the speaker. "I want you to listen to me very closely because your next actions will determine whether you end your night in your own bed or in federal custody." "Yes, sir," Bryce stammered. His throat felt like it was stuffed with sawdust. "You are going to hand the phone back to Agent Blake. You are going to step away from her. You are not to speak to her, look at her, or breathe in her direction until your commanding officer arrives. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Bryce handed the phone back to Serena. She took it without looking at him. "Blake," she said into the receiver. "I have a tactical team, minutes out." Hale said they were staging for the takedown on the engineer. "Since the element of surprise is gone, we are pivoting to asset recovery." "Are you injured?" "Superficial," Serena said, glancing at her wrists. "But the CI Frankie is gone, and he had the decryption keys for the Beirut accounts. We will find him." Hale promised. "Right now, my priority is you. Secure the scene. Do not let that local PD clown destroy any evidence. The dashcam footage is federal property now. Copy that." Serena hung up. The atmosphere in the precinct had shifted from routine boredom to a suffocating tension. Sergeant Vince Harlan was already on the landline, frantically trying to reach the watch commander. Other officers had stopped their paperwork, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure that precedes a hurricane. Bryce stood by the wall, looking like a ghost. He wanted to leave. He wanted to go home and call his dad, but he could not move. Then the doors to the lobby burst open. It was not the watch commander. 6 men in full tactical gear wearing windbreakers emblazoned with FBI in yellow letters stormed into the Arlington precinct. They moved with a fluidity and violence of action that made the local cops look like mall security. Leading them was Special Agent Marcus Hale, Serena's partner, a man the size of a vending machine with a shaved head and a beard that looked like steel wool. "Secure the room," Marcus barked. 2 agents moved to the front door, locking it. 2 others moved to the hallway leading to the cells. Marcus marched straight to the booking desk, ignoring the stunned Sergeant Vince Harlan, and made a beeline for Serena. "You good?" Marcus asked, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "I am fine," Serena said, her voice steely. "But the operation is dead." Frankie spooked when he saw the lights. Marcus's jaw tightened. He turned slowly to look at the room. "Who did it?" Serena did not point. She simply shifted her gaze to Bryce Callahan, who was shrinking into the drywall. Marcus took a step toward Bryce, but Serena put a hand on his chest. "Not here, Marcus. We do this by the book. I want his badge, I want his gun, and I want his dashcam footage before it gets accidentally corrupted. At that moment, the door to the inner offices swung open, and Captain Garrett Langford, the precinct commander, stormed out. He was a red-faced man who looked like he slept in his uniform. He had clearly just been woken up by Harlan's panic call. "What the hell is going on in my station?" Langford bellowed. "Who are you people?" "I am Special Agent Serena Blake, FBI Counterterrorism," Serena said, stepping forward. She held up her wrist, showing the angry red welts. "Your officer just arrested me without cause, assaulted a federal agent, and blew a long-running terror investigation involving a sale that is currently moving millions into the U.S. banking system." Langford stopped dead. He looked at the tactical team occupying his lobby. He looked at Bryce Callahan, who looked like he was about to vomit. "Callahan," Langford said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Is this true, Captain?" She was suspicious. She refused to ID. Bryce started, his voice high and whining. "I smelled marijuana." "He is lying," Serena said flatly, "and the dash cam will prove it. I want that data card pulled now." Langford looked at Harlan. "Pull the card now." "Captain, you cannot just let them take over." Bryce's protest was cut short. "Shut your mouth, Callahan." Langford roared, "You have done enough." Harlan went out to the garage. The silence in the room was heavy. Marcus Hale leaned in close to Bryce. "You know what you did, kid," Marcus whispered loud enough for the room to hear. "You did not just ruin a bust. That guy we were tracking, the engineer, he builds bombs for ideology. If something goes off in D.C. because we missed this handoff, that blood is not on the terrorists. It is on you." Bryce's eyes welled with tears. The reality was finally hitting him. This was not a reprimand. This was not desk duty. This was a catastrophe. Harlan returned with the SD card from the cruiser's dash cam. He handed it to Captain Langford. Langford looked at it, then looked at Serena. "I need to review this." Langford said, "Protocol, we review it together." Serena countered, "Right now in your office." Langford nodded. He knew when he was beaten. "Callahan, into the conference room. You are relieved of duty until further notice. Give me your weapon and your shield." Captain Bryce gasped, "Badge and gun, on the desk now." Bryce's hand shook as he unclipped his holster. He laid the heavy Glock 19 on the booking counter. Next to it, he placed the silver shield he had polished so proudly just that morning. He felt naked without them. He felt small. "Go sit in the conference room," Langford ordered, "and pray." The conference room was cold. The air conditioning was humming too loudly. Or maybe it was just the ringing in Bryce's ears. He had been sitting there alone. The door opened. It was not Captain Langford. It was a woman in a sharp navy blue suit. She carried a briefcase and wore an expression of absolute neutrality. This was Lieutenant Karen Brooks from Internal Affairs. She was known within the department as the Butcher because she did not just investigate bad cops, she dismantled them. Behind her came Captain Langford, Serena Blake, and a man Bryce recognized from news clips. Attorney Nathan Crow, a Department of Justice prosecutor known for civil rights cases. Bryce swallowed hard. "Where is my union rep? He is on his way," Brooks said, sitting down and opening a laptop. "But we are not waiting for him to start the preliminary review of the evidence. This is an administrative inquiry to determine immediate employment status." "I followed procedure," Bryce said, clinging to the only life raft he had left. "Let us see," Brooks said. She connected the laptop to the large monitor on the wall. The video player opened. It showed the rainy parking lot of Gold's Gym. The room watched in silence as the cruiser pulled up. They heard Bryce's muttering on the audio. "Suspicious vehicle. Pause," Serena said. Brooks paused the video. "Captain Langford," Serena said, pointing at the screen. "My vehicle is parked legally. The engine is off. I am not impeding traffic. What is the reasonable suspicion here?" Langford rubbed his temples. "Callahan, it is a high crime area," Bryce said weakly, "and she was loitering. Loitering requires intent to remain for an unlawful purpose." Attorney Nathan Crow, the DOJ prosecutor, spoke up. His voice was smooth, cultured, and terrifying. "Sitting in a car is not a crime. Continue." The video played. The spotlight hit Serena, the approach, the demand for ID. "I smell marijuana," Bryce's voice said clearly on the recording. "Stop," Brooks ordered. She looked at Bryce. "Officer Callahan, did you recover any narcotics from the vehicle?" "No," Bryce whispered. "Did you recover any paraphernalia? A pipe, a lighter, rolling papers?" "No." "Did you perform a field sobriety test?" "No." Agent Blake Brooks turned to Serena. "Will you submit to a blood toxicology screen right now?" Gladly, Serena said. I have not smoked anything in my life, and certainly not while tracking a terror suspect. Brooks turned back to Bryce. Her eyes were like lasers. So, the statement, "I smell marijuana," was a fabrication used to manufacture probable cause to search the vehicle. Is that correct? Bryce did not answer. He could not, admitting it was the end of his career, denying it was perjury. That is a Garrity warning situation. Bryce's union rep burst into the room, breathless and sweating. Do not answer that, Callahan. The rep, a thick-set man named Gus, looked at the screen and then at the people in the room. He realized instantly he had walked into a slaughter. This is an ambush, Gus said. My client has rights. Your client, Nathan Crow said, leaning forward, is looking at a federal indictment under Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. He detained a federal agent without cause, assaulted her, and kidnapped her. And he did it by fabricating evidence on tape. Kidnapping. Gus scoffed. He made an arrest. An arrest without probable cause is a kidnapping, Crow said. And since he crossed jurisdictional lines to bring her here, we could technically argue it is interstate if we really wanted to get creative. But we will stick to the civil rights violation for now. Bryce felt the blood leave his head. Prison! You did not just make a mistake, son, Captain Langford said, looking at Bryce with a mixture of pity and disgust. You lied. You lied on the radio. You lied in your report. And you lied to my face. Play the rest, Serena said. They watched the struggle. They watched Serena calmly explain her credentials. They watched Bryce scream at her. They watched him find the badge. The room went deadly silent when Bryce pulled the badge out, looked at it, and then threw it back in the bag. Found your little props. The video showed Bryce saying, and Brooks paused the video again. She zoomed in on Bryce's face in the reflection of the window. The fear was visible. You knew, Brooks said softly. Right there. You saw the credentials. You saw the commission card. You knew she was real. I thought it was fake, Bryce cried out. You can buy them online. Did you call dispatch to verify? Brooks asked. Did you ask for a supervisor? No. Why? Serena answered for him. She stood up and walked to the other side of the table, looking down at Bryce. You knew you had screwed up. You knew you had assaulted an agent, and instead of owning it, instead of apologizing and uncuffing me right there, you decided to double down. You decided to drag me to jail to try and cover your tracks. You hoped that if you charged me with enough things, resisting forgery, drugs, that something would stick and discredit me. Serena leaned down, her face inches from his. That is the definition of corruption, Officer Callahan. You were not enforcing the law. You were protecting your ego. Bryce buried his face in his hands. Captain Langford, Brooks said, closing the laptop, I am recommending immediate termination for cause. I will be referring the file to the district attorney for state charges of false imprisonment and perjury. And I, Nathan Crow added, will be convening a grand jury for the federal civil rights charges. The door opened again. A man in an expensive gray suit walked in. He was older with silver hair and the same jawline as Bryce. It was Harold Callahan, Bryce's father, the retired captain. What is this? Harold demanded, his voice booming with the entitlement of a man who had run a precinct for a decade. I get a call that my boy is being grilled without counsel. He has counsel, Brooks said, pointing to Gus. And he is not being grilled, Harold. He is being processed. For what? A bad stop. Harold scoffed. He looked at Serena. So, you are the one. You probably gave him attitude. He is a rookie. He made a judgment call. You people are blowing this out of proportion. Dad, Bryce whispered. Do not. I will handle this, Harold said, stepping toward Serena. Listen here, Missy. My family has served this county for years. You drop this complaint, and we will make sure the department apologizes. But if you try to ruin my son's life over a misunderstanding, I will make sure every skeleton in your closet is on the front page of the Washington Post tomorrow. Serena laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. She turned to Assistant Director Hale, who had been listening on speakerphone the entire time. Director, Serena said. Did you hear that? I did. Hale's voice filled the room. That sounded like witness intimidation and obstruction of justice. Harold Callahan froze. Who is that? That is the Assistant Director of the FBI, Serena said. And you just threatened a federal witness in front of an internal affairs lieutenant, a police captain, and a DOJ prosecutor. Serena smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Harold Callahan, you are under arrest. The body cam footage flooded the internet. The image of Serena Blake, calm and professional, being shoved against a wet car by a frantic, screaming Bryce Callahan, became the defining meme. The internet was merciless. They dubbed Bryce the Arlington Amateur, but for the Callahan family, it was not a meme. It was a siege. At the federal courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, the trial of United States versus Bryce Callahan had captured the nation's attention. It was not just about one bad arrest. It was a referendum on the blue wall of silence. The unspoken rule that cops protect their own no matter what. Inside courtroom 4B, the air was stale and tense. Bryce sat at the defense table wearing a suit that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost weight. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. Gone was the swaggering rookie. In his place was a terrified young man, realizing the world did not work the way his father had promised. Across the aisle sat Nathan Crow, the DOJ prosecutor. Crow moved like a shark in dark water, efficient, lethal, and unbothered by the defense's theatrics. Bryce's defense attorney was a high-priced hired gun named Jeffrey Kane, paid for by remortgaging Harold Callahan's house. Kane's strategy was desperate. "Paint Serena Blake as the aggressor. Officer Callahan," Kane said, pacing in front of the jury box. "You stated you felt threatened. Why?" "She was big," Bryce stammered on the stand. "She was aggressive. She would not answer my questions in the dark, in the rain. I thought she was reaching for a weapon. So, you made a split-second decision to protect the community." "Yes," Bryce whispered. "Objection," Crow said, not even looking up from his notes. "Calls for speculation on his own heroism sustained." Then it was Crow's turn to cross-examine. He walked up to the witness stand and placed a single photo on the railing. It was a still frame from the video. Bryce holding the FBI credentials, staring at them. "Mr. Callahan," Crow began, "you testified that you thought Agent Blake was a threat. You testified you thought her badge was fake." "Yes, sir. You attended the Northern Virginia Criminal Justice Academy, correct?" "Yes." "Did you take a course on identifying fraudulent documents?" "Yes." "In that course, you learned about holographic microprinting, correct? The specific security features of federal IDs." "I think so." Crow leaned in. "In the video, you held that badge for several seconds. You tilted it." "Why did you tilt it, Mr. Callahan?" Bryce stayed silent. Sweat beaded on his upper lip. "I will tell you why," Crow said, his voice rising to a thunderous boom. "You tilted it to check the hologram, and you saw it flash. You knew it was real. And you arrested her anyway because you were too proud to admit you were wrong. Is not that the truth?" "I was scared," Bryce cracked, tears spilling over. "I was scared I would get in trouble. So you decided to put a federal agent in a cage to save your own skin," Crow said, disgusted. No further questions. But the real blow came when Serena Blake took the stand. She did not look at Bryce. She wore her dress blues, her posture perfect. She described the arrest with clinical detachment. But then Crow asked the question that changed the trajectory of the trial. "Agent Blake, what were you doing in that parking lot?" "I was waiting for a confidential informant." Serena said, "We were tracking a domestic terror financing cell known as the Ledger. They were moving illicit funds through shell companies to purchase precursors for explosives. And what was the result of Officer Callahan's intervention?" Serena paused. The room went silent. "Because I was detained, the informant fled. The transfer we were monitoring, totaling millions, was completed successfully. The money disappeared into the banking system. The terror cell got their funding." A gasp went through the gallery. "So," Crow said, letting the weight of the words hang in the air, "Officer Callahan did not just inconvenience you, he successfully aided a terrorist organization." "Objection," Kane screamed. "Sustained," the judge said, "but the damage was done." The jury looked at Bryce, not as a clumsy cop, but as an accomplice to chaos. The sentencing hearing for United States versus Bryce Callahan took place on a morning that was deceptively bright and cheerful. Inside the federal courthouse in Alexandria, however, the atmosphere was as heavy as a funeral shroud. The courtroom was packed. Half the gallery was filled with activists and citizens who saw Bryce as the symbol of a broken system. The other half was empty, conspicuously so. The blue wall that usually packed courtrooms to support fallen officers had crumbled. No uniformed officers from the Arlington County Police Department were present. Bryce Callahan was radioactive. He sat alone at the defense table, save for his attorney, Jeffrey Kane, whose billable hours were currently bleeding the Callahan family dry. Bryce looked small. The expensive suit his mother had bought him for the trial hung off his frame like a shroud. He kept his head down, staring at the polished wood of the table, unable to look at the jury box, unable to look at Serena Blake, and terrified to look at the judge. Judge Margaret Sterling was not known for her leniency, nor was she known for her patience with public servants who betrayed the public trust. She flipped through the pre-sentencing report, the sound of the turning pages echoing in the silent room. "Mr. Kane," Judge Sterling said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Do you have any final remarks before I pass sentence?" Kane stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked tired. "Your Honor, we ask the court to consider my client's youth and inexperience. He was a young officer. He had been on the street for a short time. This was a colossal error in judgment. Yes, fueled by fear and adrenaline, but it was not malice. We ask for a sentence of probation and community service. Destroying this young man's life in a federal penitentiary serves no purpose." Nathan Crow, the DOJ prosecutor, did not even stand up fully. He simply leaned into his microphone. "Your Honor, youth is not an excuse for tyranny. Mr. Callahan did not just make a mistake. He realized his mistake, and then he chose to kidnap a federal agent to cover it up. He chose his ego over the law. The government requests the maximum under the guidelines." Judge Sterling nodded. She took off her reading glasses and looked down at Bryce. "Mr. Callahan, please stand." Bryce stood on shaking legs. He felt like he was going to vomit. "In my years on the bench," Judge Sterling began, her voice low and measured, "I have seen many officers make mistakes. I have seen bad shoots, bad stops, and bad warrants, but rarely have I seen such a calculated attempt to weaponize the justice system against an innocent citizen, let alone a federal agent, simply to save face." Bryce swallowed hard, tears pricking his eyes. "You wore the badge as if it were a crown." The judge continued. "You believed it gave you the right to demand submission, and when you did not get it, you manufactured a crime. You are not a victim of your training, Mr. Callahan. You are a victim of your own arrogance. You betrayed your oath, you betrayed your department, and you betrayed this community." She looked at the paperwork one last time. On count 1, deprivation of rights under color of law, and count 2, obstruction of justice, I sentence you to a term in a federal correctional facility to be followed by supervised release. A wail pierced the courtroom. It was Bryce's mother, clutching a rosary in the back row. Bryce's knees buckled, and Kane had to grab his arm to keep him upright. He would face years behind bars. His future was gone. His career was gone. His life as he knew it was over. As the U.S. Marshals moved in to cuff him, real steel cuffs, not the plastic zip ties he used to carry. Bryce looked back at the gallery. He saw Serena Blake. She was not smiling. She was not jeering. She just watched him with a cold, impassive gaze. It was the look of a hunter who had successfully put down a rabid animal. In the time after the sentencing, it was a slow-motion car crash for the Callahan family. Bryce was transferred to a medium-security federal prison in West Virginia. Because he was a former cop, he could not be placed in the general population. The gangs would have killed him in a day. Instead, he was placed in protective custody, which sounded safe but was essentially solitary confinement. He spent his days in a concrete box, his only company, the ghosts of his own stupidity. But the universe, it seemed, was not satisfied with just prison time. The hard karma Serena Blake had promised was about to arrive, and it was going to hit with the precision of a laser-guided missile. After the trial concluded, Serena sat in her office at the J. Edgar Hoover Building in D.C. The rain was lashing against the window, reminiscent of the gym parking lot. She was buried in paperwork closing out the administrative files on the Callahan incident. The door to her office flew open. It was Marcus Hale, her partner. He looked breathless, holding a thick dossier stamped Cyber Division. "You need to see this," Marcus said, skipping the pleasantries. "Is this the trace on the funds?" Serena asked, rubbing her temples. "I thought we hit a dead end in Estonia." "We did," Marcus said, dropping the file on her desk. "The money is gone, Serena. The millions that the ledger moved while you were in handcuffs. It has been washed through a dozen crypto exchanges. It is unrecoverable." "Great," Serena sighed. "So, the bad guys won. They got the cash." "Yeah, they got the cash," Marcus said, a strange grim smile playing on his lips. "But we finally cracked the source code of the hack. We know where the money came from." Serena frowned. "I thought it was cartel drug money." "That is what Frankie implied. Frankie was wrong, or he only knew half the story." Marcus said. He pulled a chair up and opened the dossier. He pointed to a flowchart of digital transactions. The ledger was not moving dirty cash. They were liquidating a hacked investment account. They breached a municipal server in Northern Virginia about the time Bryce Callahan shined that flashlight in your face. They were waiting for the transfer window. Okay, Serena said, leaning in. Whose account was it? It was a holding trust, Marcus said. Specifically, a high-yield pension fund managed by a private equity firm for municipal employees. He flipped the page to reveal a document with a header, Arlington County Fraternal Order of Police Legacy Trust. Serena froze. She looked at the words, processing them. Legacy Trust, she asked. It is the defined benefit plan for officers who retired before the restructuring, Marcus explained, his voice thick with irony. It is where they keep the nest eggs for the old guard, the captains, the lieutenants, the guys who put in decades. Serena's eyes widened as the realization hit her like a physical blow. Harold Callahan, she whispered. I pulled the beneficiary list, Marcus said, sliding a spreadsheet across the desk. Harold Callahan, retired captain. He had his entire retirement savings sitting in that trust, pending a transfer to a safer bond market. That is what the hackers targeted. They drained the liquidity pool. Serena sat back in her chair, stunned. The timeline was mercilessly clear. At the moment, Serena had been sitting in the parking lot, ready to intercept the encryption keys from Frankie that would have frozen the hackers' access. Bryce Callahan had arrested her. While Bryce was screaming about marijuana and dragging Serena into his cruiser, the hackers executed the command. Because Bryce had stopped Serena, the FBI could not stop the hack. It gets worse, Marcus said, though he did not look like he thought it was worse. He looked like he believed in poetic justice. Because the fund was breached through a credentials phishing attack on a verified user, the insurance company is fighting the claim. They are saying it was user error. The litigation could take years, so the money is just gone. Poof. Harold Callahan is currently sitting in a minimum security camp for witness intimidation. When he gets out, he will have nothing. No pension, no nest egg, and since they leveraged his house to pay for Bryce's defense attorney, the bank initiated foreclosure proceedings. Serena stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the city, gray and washed in rain. She thought about the arrogance of the Callahan men, the father who thought he could threaten a federal agent to make a problem go away, the son who thought a badge gave him the right to bully a woman in the dark. They had been so sure of their power, so convinced that they were the predators and everyone else was prey. In his desperate, ego-driven attempt to protect the community from a woman sitting in her car, Bryce Callahan had personally held the door open for the thieves who robbed his own father blind. He had not just ruined his own life. He had incinerated his family's future. Do you want to release this to the press? Marcus asked. It would be the final nail in the coffin. Rookie cop helps terrorists steal dad's pension. Serena shook her head slowly. No, she said softly. We do not need to. They know. Harold knows. Bryce knows. That knowledge is going to rot them from the inside out faster than any headline could. She turned back to her desk and picked up her phone. She typed a quick message to Frankie, who was back in the wind digging up new leads. Account closed. We move on. She clipped her gold FBI shield onto her belt, the shield that Bryce Callahan had been too proud to acknowledge until it was too late. Come on, Marcus, Serena said, grabbing her jacket. We have work to do, and I am not waiting in a parking lot this time. The tragic unraveling of Bryce Callahan serves as a brutal modern parable about the cost of unchecked ego. In his desperate attempt to play the hero, he became the architect of his own destruction. He did not just lose his freedom, he obliterated the very legacy he was trying to uphold. The irony is as sharp as a knife. The authority he abused was the only thing standing between his family and ruin. And by misusing it, he ensured their downfall. It is a reminder that the badge does not make the officer. Character does. And when character fails, the consequences have a way of echoing far beyond the moment of the mistake. The tragic unraveling of Bryce Callahan serves as a powerful, deeply human reminder that unchecked ego can quietly destroy everything we hold dear. In his desperate bid to feel like a hero, a young officer let pride override judgment, training, and basic decency. What began as one arrogant mistake snowballed into a cascade of lies, ruined careers, shattered families, and even unintended harm to the very community he swore to protect. The story hits hard because it reveals a painful truth we all face when we refuse to admit we are wrong. When we double down instead of owning our errors, we do not just hurt ourselves. We drag down the people who love us most. Bryce did not only lose his badge and his freedom, he lost his future, his father's retirement, and the quiet respect that once surrounded his family name. The irony cuts deep. The very authority he abused became the instrument of his family's ruin. It is a sobering lesson that character, not a title or a uniform, defines who we truly are. In moments of pressure, humility is not weakness. It is the quiet strength that saves lives, relationships, and legacies. This tale leaves the heart heavy with the weight of what could have been avoided with a single honest pause and a willingness to say, "I was wrong." If Bryce's fall moved you, or if it made you reflect on times when ego nearly cost you everything, drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Was the ending justice, or was it too harsh? How do you keep pride in check when emotions run high? I read every single comment, and your stories truly inspire the next videos. If you want more raw, emotional life lessons wrapped in gripping true-style stories, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching. Stay humble, stay kind, and I will see you in the next.